The M777 Howitzer is a big and bulky piece of artillery, tipping the scales at over 4 tons. It has no engine and no armor, and despite incorporating advanced targeting and fire control systems, it's still a very conventional piece of military hardware. So, on paper, it should be relatively useless in the Russia-Ukraine war, a conflict that's become dominated by advanced unmanned aerial vehicles and state-of-the-art weapons systems. After all, with their kamikaze drones swarming across the skies, Russia should have little trouble seeking and destroying its enemy's artillery with ease. Yet, through a mixture of grit, innovation, and intelligent adaptation, Ukraine has made this seemingly worthless weapon an invaluable and deadly element of its arsenal. But before we look at how that's happened, here's a closer look at the weapon in question. The M777 Howitzer is a towed 155mm artillery system, designed and developed by the British defense company BAE Systems, though around 70% of its parts are actually made in the United States, with production and integration work taking place across both the UK and the US. The first M777s rolled off the production lines in early 2000s, and they've since been introduced to service with ground forces in the US, Australia, Canada, Colombia, India, Saudi Arabia, and Ukraine, with the M777 first seeing combat during the war in Afghanistan. They've also been used in the Iraq War, the Syrian Civil War, the Yemeni Civil War, and now the Russo-Ukrainian War as well. Time and again, they've proven immensely effective. And when you take a look at the technical specifications of the M777, it's not hard to see why. Firstly, despite being relatively big and bulky, they're significantly lighter than older models. To be more precise, at 4.2 tons, the M777 is 41% lighter than the 7.15-ton M198 Howitzer it was designed to replace. This is primarily due to the fact that it uses relatively lightweight titanium for large parts of its design, and since it's so much lighter than its predecessor, it's much easier to move around from A to B. It can be transported by helicopters and transport aircraft like the Lockheed C-130 Hercules or C-5 Galaxy, for example, and can also be towed along the ground using air brake vehicles like the FMTV and MTVR tactical vehicles. The more modern design of the M777 also means that it doesn't require as many people to operate it. Older models needed crews of up to 9 members, while the M77 can cope with just 5 or even crews as small as 3 people in emergency situations. Arguably, the biggest advantage of the M777 is its precision. Making use of advanced digital fire control systems, as well as GPS-guided munitions, it has the power to strike targets that are up to 25 miles, 40 kilometers away, with extraordinary precision and only the slimmest margins of error. Its incredible accuracy has even seen some experts dub it a giant sniper rifle, able to pick off targets from range more efficiently than almost any other howitzer. Then there's the M777's versatility. It's capable of firing a wide range of munitions, including M982 smart artillery shells that are able to land within 33 feet, 10 meters of their targets, even when fired from up to 15 miles or 24 kilometers away. It can also launch the likes of M549A1 rocket-assisted projectiles, Bofors-guided artillery cluster rounds, M1128 base bleed projectiles, and extended-range XM113 rounds too. Only months into the war, in April 2022, Ukraine received a large batch of 90 M777 systems from the United States, with additional units supplied by Canada and Australia. More arrived in the months and years that followed, and the US has also supplied several million shells, including both conventional munitions and specialized shells like the M718 Remote Anti-Armor Mines, RAM, which is a type of artillery shell with anti-tank mines inside it. While there were some initial teething troubles as Ukrainian soldiers learned to make the most of the systems, they soon proved highly effective. Indeed, by early 2024, the M777 was being classed as perhaps the single most defining weapon in the conflict. At the time, artillery was the biggest damage dealer on the battlefield, accounting for around 80% of casualties on both sides, with February 2024 estimates suggesting that artillery systems had directly killed or wounded around 400,000 troops in total. And despite having numerous Western weapon systems at its disposal, including the French Caesar 155mm self-propelled howitzer, the American M142 high-mobility artillery rocket system, HIMARS, and the M109 Paladin self-propelled gun, the M777 was arguably the most highly prized among Ukrainian artillery teams, because it was so easy to work with, so precise and so reliable, proving its worth time and time again. In February 2023, for example, the Kremlin's forces were making an aggressive push to capture a small town in the Donbass named Vuhledar. Huge numbers of Russian troops and Wagner Group mercenaries stormed the area, and one assault also involved a large mechanized column of tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and armored personnel carriers attempting to force their way through a choke point. The M777 picked them off like a fish in a barrel. Over 30 heavy weapon systems were destroyed in only a short span of time, with Ukraine using the US-made M718 ram shells to wipe out tanks and APCs with ease. There were countless similar stories in other frontline locations, but as time went by, the war began to go in a very different direction, and many experts feared the worst for the M777. Russia began to rely far less on conventional ground warfare tactics and mechanized assaults, beginning instead to deploy unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, in far greater quantities than ever before. Ukraine too slowly but surely transitioned towards this style of warfare, developing and deploying its own arsenal of drones to counteract the enemy's attacks. And with literally thousands of drones soaring over the front lines at any given moment, big heavy artillery systems suddenly seem like massive targets, just waiting to be wiped off the map. Ukraine could no longer simply position its M777s wherever it wanted and blast away at enemy assault groups. Instead, it had to be constantly wary of the threat from above, constantly listening out for the distinctive buzzing sound of Russia's Shahed drones and other explosive UAVs. Because while the M777 is certainly capable of dishing out a significant amount of damage, it's not exactly built to take much of it in return. It doesn't have its own armor or other protective measures, for example, and a single drone hit in the right place is enough to put a whole howitzer out of action, either temporarily or in the worst cases permanently. It's no surprise that many military analysts believe that the M777 would inevitably become worthless as the conflict moved deeper and deeper into its drone warfare phase. But that didn't happen. Even now in 2026, Ukrainian artillery teams are still using the 777 on a regular basis. They still rate it as one of the most important assets at their disposal, with one artillery crew, the 1st Separate Assault Regiment, openly admitting that if it weren't for the M777s, Ukraine would be in a significantly weaker position today. The 1st Regiment adds that it recently received a fresh batch of these howitzers. Now we have a few more of these 777 howitzers, and all of them are already in position, and we're very happy to have them because they're very precise. These guns continue to demonstrate remarkable levels of efficiency, with Ukrainian teams reporting 80% efficiency rates, meaning that the vast majority of shells fired end up striking their intended targets, and they continue to take out enemy tanks, vehicles, troop concentrations, and other assets day in and day out. But how is this possible? With Russian drones patrolling the skies and packing payloads big enough to obliterate an M77 in the blink of an eye, how has Ukraine managed to consistently and continuously extract so much value from these weapons? Well, it all comes down to adaptation. As the state of the war has changed and evolved, Ukraine has had to find ways to evolve with it. But rather than simply retiring its M777s and accepting they're no longer fit for purpose, Kyiv's forces have instead uncovered new, innovative, and intelligent ways to use them. But before we look at how exactly they're doing that, if this is the kind of insight you want more of, make sure you're subscribed to the Military Show. We break it down like this every week. In the earlier stages of the war, Ukraine could tow its 777 guns close to frontline locations and fire away on enemy positions, blasting enemy vehicles off the map. Now with the drone threat, that tactic won't work. As soon as the M777 fires a single shell, the enemy activates. Drone crews burst into action, with reconnaissance UAVs, Lancet loitering munitions, and the constant threat of Shahed drones turning the skies into a deadly hunting ground, seeking and destroying enemy artillery before the crew even has time to reload or line up their next shot. As a result, Ukraine has had to change the way it works with M777s. Rather than occupying the same location for an extended period of time, it's moved towards so-called scoot-and-shoot tactics, which involve repositioning the howitzers multiple times over the course of a single day, never settling in one place for too long. It's not easy. The 1st Regiment admits as much, stating, "No matter how experienced your crew is, getting to position with a gun like this is largely a lottery. There's always a risk of being spotted while on the move, and soldiers also have to pack up all of the munitions and other equipment as they relocate from place to place. Then, when they arrive in a new location, there's a challenge of setting the gun up all over again, loading it, lighting up the shot and so on, before getting ready to evacuate the area once more. It's a tiresome process, but it's the best way to keep these howitzers intact and effective for as long as possible. And for now, it's working. This is where the M77's design features come into play. The fact that it's so lightweight compared to older artillery systems means that it's not too difficult to transport, even across tricky terrain, and Ukrainian crews have mastered the art of setting up their guns and dismantling them. They can complete these complex procedures in a matter of minutes, allowing them to get in and out of firing locations before the Russians have time to figure out exactly where they are and retaliate. But this isn't the only way that Ukrainian forces are making the most of their M777s in 2026. Kyiv's forces also have several additional tricks up their sleeves, like decoys for example. Using the simplest and cheapest of materials, including wood, scrap metal, and even older sewer pipes, Ukraine's genius engineers have crafted completely fake M77s to fool the Russians into wasting drones taking them out. Despite being assembled from crude components, these decoys are often remarkably realistic. Some of them have little puffs of smoke to make it seem as though they've recently been fired, for example, while others may be equipped with simple heat sources like battery-powered heaters or small engines to mimic the heat signatures of genuine gun barrels, making it more likely that Russian drones will spot them and waste time and resources trying to take them out. Meanwhile, the real M777s are already on their way to another firing location. In some cases, these decoys cost less than $1,000 to make, but Russia can waste UAVs worth up to $50,000 to destroy them, and all those losses add up over time. It's just one of the many ways in which Ukraine is winning the economic side of the war, forcing Russia to throw money, men and resources away and get almost nothing in return. Ukraine has also made some rather unusual modifications to its M777 howitzers. Many of the models in use today, for example, have had their electronics and fire control systems removed. That might sound crazy, but there's actually a very logical reason behind it. When M777s first arrived in Ukraine, many came with batteries, tablets, and GPS sensors built into their designs. Beneath the gun itself, for example, there was a compartment containing batteries that powered the tablets, while the 2 tablets were positioned at each of the gunner's stations. Over time, however, Ukraine realized that Russia was actually using the electronic signatures from those tablets, batteries, and sensors to pinpoint M77 locations and attack them. That's when the guys realized it was better to disconnect them, explained a representative from the 1st Regiment, adding, "It's more effective to work the old-fashioned way." Without all that electronic equipment, it's much harder for the Russians to find and destroy Ukraine's guns, and it's thanks to innovative solutions like this that Ukraine is still able to use the M777 on such a regular basis to stop the enemy's frontline assaults in their tracks. Of course, the downside is that this also puts more pressure on the 777's crew when it comes to loading the gun and lining up their shots. They have to use huge curved rods, known as rammers for example, to force shells into the barrel. It's hard work. The shells are heavy, the rods are awkward, and the guns themselves are extremely loud and take time to reposition. Again, however, Ukraine is finding ways to make its crews more efficient. Some units, for example, have been seen sporting advanced exoskeleton suits that make it much easier for them to pick up and position the shells without putting excessive pressure on their backs and bodies. Operating teams also do their best to avoid being wasteful with the weapons and munitions at their disposal, with one M777 crew commander telling interviewers, "We fire strictly at our targets, no unnecessary shots. If we deploy, we work briefly but effectively." That's important for 2 big reasons. Firstly, more efficient usage of the M777 means fewer rounds are wasted and more of them find their target, dealing maximum damage to the Russian ranks and giving the enemy fewer opportunities to retaliate. Secondly, by not wasting shots or firing its howitzers excessively, Ukraine is making them last longer. because systems like this don't tend to have the longest lifespans. Typically, an M777 barrel can fire a maximum of 2,500 rounds before it needs to be repaired or replaced. And even though Ukraine has received plenty of systems and munitions from its allies, it doesn't have an unlimited supply to work with. It has to make the most of the resources at its disposal. It has to make every shot count, and it can't afford to simply fire shells at random, hoping and praying that some of them hit their targets. Instead, its crews are rigidly resourceful, picking their targets and timing their shots to perfection. And it's thanks to that they're able to enjoy such incredible efficiency rates, with some crews even reporting up to 95% accuracy rates, with only a tiny fraction of shells failing to connect with their targets. This is a testament to both the excellent design of the M77 itself and the patience and discipline of its Ukrainian operators. Of course, they still face challenges. Even with scoot-and-shoot tactics and smarter positioning, drones are always a threat. Various anti-drone defenses help to reduce the risk of direct impacts and destroyed guns, including the likes of drone nets positioned above gun placements, electronic warfare technologies that help to jam drones' navigation systems and send them spiraling off target, and counter-battery radar and drone surveillance networks that warn crews if and when Russia is preparing to strike back. Ukraine also picks and chooses its firing locations with the utmost care, often only deploying its howitzers in secure, fortified locations that are much more resistant to drones and enemy batteries than exposed locations. Even with these defensive tactics and protective measures, not all M777s leave the battlefield intact. Fortunately, Ukrainian engineers have also become exceptionally adept at repairing damaged units and redeploying them onto the battlefield. As one soldier notes, "Our howitzers have taken hits from Lancet drones, Grad rockets, and Krasnopol shells, but we always manage to fix them." In some cases, when they need to make rapid repairs in the heat of battle, Ukrainian teams have been known to use whatever spare parts they can find to construct Frankenstein guns, made up of parts from multiple different units. In other cases, damaged artillery systems are sent to repair factories, where talented teams of mechanics work miracles to make these decades-old weapons look and feel as good as new, all over again. As one Ukrainian soldier sums up, "It was designed for Afghanistan and for the war in Iraq, but in combat, we mostly use it our own way. We figure out a lot of things ourselves." That, in a nutshell, is the story of Ukraine throughout this war. It hasn't always been dealt with the best hand, it hasn't always had the ideal equipment for every situation, and it has to deal with a very dynamic type of war that has shifted massively from its early stages into something completely different several years later. But time and time again, it's defied the odds. It's found ways to make things work in its favor. It's turned seemingly worthless or outdated assets into invaluable pieces of its military machine. And it's reaping the rewards, with M77s continuing to rain down fire on Russian positions and cause chaos for the Kremlin's forces. Now learn more about Ukraine's military innovation in this video, which explores how Kyiv soldiers carried out a devastating long-range attack on Russia's fighter fleet. Or check out this video for a deeper look at how the momentum of the war has shifted massively in Ukraine's favor. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the Military Show too for more insights, analysis, and detailed reports from this conflict and others.